Hi folks, thanks for joining me. I've got the little Silvertone companion 57D 1704 back on the bench. It's time to get started on the electrical restoration. Before I do, just wanted to call out a couple of things. This is the one I actually created the brand new front, the top, and have this hand-drawn inlay. Anyway, it turned out really well. I put the radio inside the house, low humidity over the summer, and I did have some of the veneer lift down in this corner. It's kind of discouraging. Walked by one day, saw it kind of curled up, but anyway, I got it to lay back down. Unfortunately, it did create a little bit of a problem here with the finish on this corner. Just some raised marks, so we'll try to work those out a little later down the road, and if I can't, no big deal. It'll just add some character to the radio itself. What I recall about the chassis, this thing was rusty as heck, so let me get the knobs off. Let's get the chassis out real quick and take a look at it, just see what lies ahead. Well, having the chassis out of the cabinet, I can definitely remember this one. All the metal, for one thing, and more metal equals more rust, and you can see that's apparent here on this particular chassis. So I'll probably spend more time just doing the cleanup of the rust and the prep itself, just to make this more presentable than the electronic side. But you never know. We'll find out as we run through this together over time. But what a cool design though. I do recall this. You've got this top shell piece probably acting as a heat reflector, as well as shielding the different parts of the circuits from each other and reducing oscillation. You can see here the fabricated tube shield that was used back in the day out of sheet metal for this section, and the top piece here as well. So it looks like there's an RF coil maybe stuck in back here, and you've got another one that resides here. I do think I recall something odd about the tube itself. Maybe it was the rectifier tube or one of the tubes being misplaced. So I'll go back and look at my notes and actually watch my first video when I introduced this. But we'll go ahead and get started. Here's another shot underneath, and I do recall the tuning condenser is definitely locked up on this thing. So there'll be a lot of part removal, but here's a nice underside shot, and you definitely can see the electrolytics bank, which appears to be in this section. And just looking at it, I can tell it's not original. Someone has worked on it at times. There's some tape holding it. We've got some string. Looks like the capacitor's leaky on this side and opened up. And hopefully these coils are good. I'm going to move forward without even checking the coils, and if one's bad, I'll look for a replacement, or I'll test my skills doing a rewind if necessary. Hopefully that won't come back to bite me. Many dog bone resistors, as you can see, that will replace also as needed. Let me go grab the schematic, just refresh myself, and then I think I'm going to just start out mechanically getting the top piece off. See what it's going to take to get access to the tuning condenser here, since it's seized up, and that's one of the first things I typically do. Get the speaker removed also, if that's not much of a headache. Get the tubes out, and just make myself some more notes here. Okay, I was beating myself up just a bit here for a few minutes, and I was looking for my prior documentation. I cleaned up. I wouldn't really call it cleaning up. I made a bigger mess, but piled up some of my paperwork from existing projects that I had not completed, and boxed them up. Anyway, I can't find my first notes I made on this particular chassis, so I'm going to just go back through it again very quickly and see what we got. So let's start over here on this side, get the tubes out, and just document everything one more time, just to make sure that what I have in my notes matches the schematic when I reference back to that point. Okay, a 6 Charlie 6 here. And what do we have here? A 6 Baker 7, a 6B7. And one more tube. This is a Philco tube. And a 6 Alpha 7, 6A7. And just looking at the big guy here, I would expect this to be the rectifier tube or the audio output tube. And let's see, yeah, it's probably audio output. Looks like a type 43 tube, type 43. It may be the original Silvertone tube. That'd be cool. So a closer look at the chassis with the tubes out of the way, and you can see definitely what lies ahead. There's just a ton of rust on this chassis. It's almost like it's been submerged in salt water at some point in time and brought back up on land. So maybe that was the case, you never know. Even looking at the speaker frame itself, I mean, it's just totally rusted up. Even rust around the volume control potentiometer, these adjustable trimmers. There's just rust everywhere. The tuning condenser itself is seized up. It's probably just rusted up as well. So that looks like that's going to be the majority of my time for sure. Anyway, it will definitely be rewarding if we're successful and able to make this thing play again. I think I'm going to go ahead and start out, even before I go back and dig up the schematic and figure out what this tube was and see if the others were even in the right locations and called out correctly, is just do some documentation up here, take a few still photos. I'll do that offline, and go ahead and do some wire clipping here, see what it's going to take to get the tuning condenser out of my way, so we can take a closer look in this area. And it looks like a roll-up speaker. I see an R, but that's interesting. It's a looks like a very nice small speaker. So we'll be eager to test it out just a bit down the road and see if it performs well. Wow, we're going to have some fun with this one. I took some still photos here. I'm going to just go ahead and cut a few wires here right at the solder point connection. So that's the only two. You can see this is a 3-section tuning condenser. I had already mentioned it's seized up as tight as can be, probably one of the tightest I've ever worked on. And let's see, we've got one more connection point here with this coil that attaches back to the tuning condenser frame itself. Let me just grab my VOM and make sure the tuning condenser itself, the frame, is tied to the chassis ground here, just for reference. Make sure this is not floating with grommets, just so I'll know for certain. Alright, let me check here to see if I've got continuity between the chassis itself and the frame itself here. Okay, I didn't think I saw any grommets down here, but I just wanted to make certain that this was not isolated from the chassis ground. It's not. Now, one thing that's interesting, this coil, even though you'll see there's a connection point here, it looks like this is more for stability. There's a standoff here, but there's no electrical connection between this point and the frame itself. So I know that's not showing up there on camera well. Let me just point that out or spin it around so you guys can see that. So you've got this little standoff here. This is isolated, like, you know, from the tuning condenser itself. Let me see if I can work this loose here. Looks like I've got a couple screws or fasteners here that hold the tuning condenser here on the back to the chassis, and just see what other connection points we have. I most likely have some routing of some wires coming up from underneath the chassis back to the tuning condenser as well that I'll have to deal with. Well, that came out a lot easier than I thought. You just never know sometimes. Looks like I've got one flat washer is on the back side, so actually a lock washer. Let's see if I can separate this piece now. There we go. Alright, now I just want to be very careful here and make sure I don't damage the coil right there, so I'll just let that reside there. Pretty cool. Only one section of the tuning condenser here has a connection point, and I'll do my best to show that on camera. It's this rear section here. Everything else, no connections. So I should be able to remove this screw, and the two in the back and the tuning condenser should be able to be removed. It's pretty cool. They used lock washers so far on every location, including up here where you've got the standoff itself. We'll see if that holds true through the entire chassis. Alright, let me work myself around here to the front piece. And indeed, there looks like there's a lock washer there also. Let's see if I'm missing anything, or if I can slip this tuning condenser out at this point. Alright, what am I missing here? Alright, I think I see why. There's actually, and you guys may not be able to see this on camera due to the lighting, but stuck right back in here there's a mica capacitor, and it's actually soldered back to the frame right here of the tuning condenser. So let me see if I can cut that lead right in here. You may see it now dangling right in there. And let's see what else we've got. And we've got this one coil connection right here as well that comes to this first section of the tuning condenser, also right here, that attaches to the frame. So let me cut it loose. Okay, I don't see anything else right now. Let's see if this thing will just come right out now. One thing I don't like, and I think you can see it here, the tuning condenser is seized up, but you'll see that this back section right here, if that's showing up, is all bent in, and you can see where the tuning condenser on this third section is shorted. So when I said it's seized up, that may be part of the problem right there. It definitely will not turn, but let me see if I can continue to work this loose here without making contact here with the coil and creating some new problem. Alright, I'm almost clear. Alright, what am I hung on now? One more connection point that I did not see. So the other connection point itself going to the tuning condenser. So just be sure that that's documented, and I'll go ahead and snap this one also. So it's going to be the longer of the two. And you can see there just how much crud is on this chassis that I've been speaking to, and the tuning condenser itself. And she's definitely locked up. And here is the one of the problems with the tuning condenser. See how all this is mashed in right here? So I'm not sure how that damage occurred, but something's been in there and just forced these two plates up against each other. Hopefully I'll be able to straighten those out. But she's tight as a drum right now. Alright, let me see how this speaker itself is attached. And I'll tell you what, something else I can go ahead and get rid of, most likely to be fairly easy. Let me go ahead and get rid of this tube shield right here. Just held on by maybe a few fasteners from underneath or from the side. I can actually remove it, so I can actually get back here and take a closer look and see if indeed this is a roll-up speaker. I'll go ahead and do these other three off camera, but interesting. More lock washers in place. You don't see that a lot. That's pretty cool. Good thing I've got plenty of Evapo-Rust on hand, because I'll definitely need it. The tube shield's removed. All locations had the lock washers in place. Lost one right down in here. I'll have to grab it out from underneath the chassis when I get to that point. You know, this may be a complete teardown, as bad as the chassis looks. Let me see what it's going to take now to get the speaker itself removed. And I think I want to get this coil right here off the chassis also before I damage it. And hopefully it's not already damaged. Look at this area back here. I'll try to zoom in, so I'm not sure if that's fallen off in time due to temperature changes, humidity, water, or you know, maybe some mice nibbling around in this area. That's somewhat concerning. Best I can tell, this particular coil here is affixed to the chassis with these two fasteners. So let me go ahead and back those off here and get those removed. Okay, I was correct. The two fasteners there hold the coil itself on. And I'm going to just go ahead and clip this lead right here. And that allows the coil to come through. Then I think what I'll do is, looks like I've got a nice solder connection right here, just past this knot. I'm going to just go ahead and cut this here. And now we've got just one of the coils out. And I am concerned about it, as you can see. Looks like something's been gnawing away in this area, but I'm not certain if that's down into the wire itself or not, the magnet wire. We may have to ohm this out just a little sooner before I go too far forward with the restoration. Alright, now I can see a few fasteners here that hold the, that is a roll-up speaker, by the way, that you can see. So it looks like I've got at least 1, 2, 3, I'm not sure from what underneath. I'm holding the speaker in place, and then of course we've got the leads itself from the output transformer here. and the fill coil is located here. Alright, there's 4 leads there leaving the speaker frame, and the first 2, and I think these are the output transformer. You can see this green wire here, and the other one may be more of a tan or a yellow. It's hard to see under the light. It almost looks white, looks tan, looks yellow. But one goes back over here, and it looks like it attaches to the 43 tube, which you would expect it to do, and the other here goes back to this particular pot here, and this looks like a capacitor. It's maybe a resistor. I don't know, it's kind of odd. I'll have to look for that on the schematic, but I'm going to go ahead and just document these locations here. That again being this tanned or blonde looking wire that attaches, let's make sure, I'm certain, it attaches itself right here. And the green wire going back here to the tube, the 40, what I say that was, a 43 audio output tube, power tube right here. And then the other leads off the fill coil, and I didn't even really notice this up front, I wasn't even paying that much attention. You can see there's a phonograph plug here on the back of the chassis, or what I would assume to be a phonograph plug. I need to go back and look at the schematic and see if that's actually called out or if this was added at a later date. Best I can tell though, the fill coil connection points go back to this plug, and then you can see then they tie back down into the B+ side of the circuit. Let me document this in my notes, make sure I've got some great still photography as well. And I'm going to go ahead and clip that, and I think there's 3 fasteners here holding the little, looks like a 5-inch speaker in place here. Let's get this thing removed before I poke my finger through it. With the wires cut underneath now, I think I've got all the fasteners loose. Let's see. Or did I miss one? There we go. See if I can get that out without messing up the speaker cone. You can see the old spider there in the middle. Doesn't look like it's broke, but we'll check this out. You can see for sure it is a roll-up speaker, so good high quality speaker, and it's definitely got some weight to it. So that center pole piece is right heavy, right large. Let me set this down flat out of the way. And you can see we're making a little progress here. Leftover bug or rat turd. Probably should have my gloves on. As nasty as this thing is. Need to understand what this is. It's odd. It almost looks like a cardboard box for a capacitor. Let me see what leads are coming out of this, or maybe it's a coil itself. Now, let's see, the grid lead here bypasses that. This lead also bypasses that. So what the heck is connected to that piece? It looks like somebody's clipped the leads at some point, and maybe some of these capacitors underneath here with the turds on them are was once above the chassis here. and they just left the original box for aesthetic purposes. You can see the Cornell, probably Dupler or Cornell Electric is what it says, and I can see part of a number there. So I'll pull the schematic and see if that particular part number is called out. That's interesting that it was mounted here. It has to be one of these smaller capacitors though, just based on the size. You know what I'm thinking about doing? You guys may think I'm crazy. I think I'm going to strip the rest of these coils off of this thing. I think I'm going to just dump the whole thing into Evapo-Rust, tube sockets and all. I've done that before on my Shanti Clear, and it's still a great player. It didn't create any harm. And honestly, looking at this thing, you know, once I get the coils out, I'm going to have to replace about everything in here anyway. The wire looks to be cloth in nature, so it should not be damaged. What gets damaged or compromised, I'll replace. I may just do that. Hey folks, that'll wrap it up here for this segment. Thanks again for watching. More to come.